10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Go. Main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff.
You're listening to Terry L. Fossum's motivational series, Blow the Bolts. Bolt number 1.
The first bolt that we're going to blow is fear. From now on, fear will no longer hold you back from accomplishing your goals and dreams ever again. You'll learn not to face your fears, but to look past your fears and focus on your goals, your dreams, your aspirations. And that in doing so, your fears will melt away and never have control over you again. Let's get started. The date was August 5th, 1864, and the American Civil War was raging on. Admiral David G. Farragut was tasked to attack a Confederate stronghold at Mobile Bay, the final critical port on the Gulf of Mexico. This was considered a suicide mission by many, as though it was guarded by a Confederate fleet less in number. It was also guarded not by one, but 3 great forts and the massive guns that went with them. Perhaps even worse, the bay was littered with mines, known then as torpedoes, that could sink a ship with one tragic blast. A weathered war veteran, Admiral Farragut ordered all of his ships to tie themselves 2 by 2, a larger vessel with a smaller vessel, so if one were to hit a torpedo, the other one had a hope of keeping it from sinking. So the attack began. The worst possible scenario happened immediately. One of the first ships that entered the bay, the Tecumseh, hit a torpedo and sank immediately. The smoke from the fire and the guns filled the entire bay, so much so that no one could see from one ship to the next. Confusion, panic, screams of men filled the air. All of the ships stopped where they were for fear of being the next to hit a torpedo and being sent to their watery grave below. They were frozen in place, not taking any action at all, and they were being ripped apart by the guns of the fort and the ironclad Tennessee, picking them off like sitting ducks. But Admiral Farragut did what every good leader would do. He rose above the confusion, the mayhem, the dread that filled the men around him. In fact, literally, he tied himself to the top of the mast of the ship where he could see above the smoke, and seeing that his entire armada was frozen in fear, set his masts at full and charged into the battle, yelling at the top of his lungs, "Damn the torpedoes! Full speed ahead!" The armada followed his lead and charged into battle, taking the victory and beating the final stronghold for the Confederate Army. Damn the torpedoes! Full speed ahead. Look past the challenges. Look past the fears. See, having fear isn't the problem. We all have fears. Letting fear stop you is the problem. Fear can be debilitating. It can stop you in your tracks. It can keep you from moving forward on your goals and dreams. It can control you, but only if you let it. See, there's a joke about a pirate captain that I love because it exhibits the fear we all truly have, whether we show it or not. There was once a treasure ship filled with gold, sailing quickly as it could to its home port. Before it could reach it, it was spotted by a pirate ship, which began a hot pursuit. The first mate was frantic. "Captain, Captain, what shall we do?" The mighty captain gained his composure, cleared his throat, and commanded, "Run quickly to my cabin, my good man, and fetch me my red shirt." The first mate sprang away. Standing tall on the upper deck, his bright red shirt waving in the wind like a banner, the good captain gave the crew courage to fight, and fight they did. So voraciously, in fact, that the pirate ship quickly turned tail and ran. And there was much rejoicing. Huzzah! But a few days later, they returned, this time with another pirate ship alongside of them, ready for the fight. "Captain, Captain, now there are 2 pirate ships. There's no way we can withstand that attack. What shall we do?" And again the captain composed himself, cleared his throat, and barked the order, "First mate, fetch me my red shirt." The battle ensued, and what a battle it was. Our good captain's treasure ship was boarded from both sides, and the fight was ferocious. But the captain's bright red shirt again stood out above all, and as his crew saw him fighting confidently, they fought on until both of the pirate ships were defeated, limping off into the sunset. The losses, however, were heavy, and the crew forlorn. That night, over a well-deserved mug of rum, the first mate inquired of the captain, "Captain, why is it that in the face of battle you send me to fetch your red shirt?" "The men must see me as a pillar of strength," he said. "If I'm injured and the blood shows, they'll question that. The red shirt disguises my injuries." Finally, the ship was mere days from port, and finally the tension began to ease, but too quickly, for the captain was awoken by his trusty first mate, who was frantic with fear. "Captain, Captain, the sun rose this morning to show an entire armada of pirate ships surrounding us from every direction. What do we do? What do we do?" Terror drained the blood from our good captain's face, but he attempted to gain his composure and swallowed hard. "My good man, fetch me my brown pants." See, there's an old saying in the military, there are no atheists in foxholes. And why is that? Because when people are trying to kill you, you find God. You can try to be as cavalier as you want, but the moment bullets start flying past your head and people start dropping around you, you start praying that you're not one of them. You may not be sure if there is a God or not, but just in case you're about to meet him, you'd best make your acquaintance ahead of time. And if you've ever been in sales, you know that sales calls are the same way. I've never prayed so much as right before a sales call. Oh, please, God, don't let them be mean to me. Don't let them be having a bad day. Don't let them hate me. Please, let me get an answering machine. And if you've ever had to make sales calls, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And why is that? Because we run through all the worst-case scenarios in our head ahead of time. We just know our prospect is going to yell at us and say, "No, it costs too much." We need to put our brown pants on before we even pick up the phone. In fact, fear of rejection is the number one thing that takes people out of the sales world. The number one thing, the fear of rejection. That fear, more than anything, keeps us from making our calls the lifeblood of our profession. That fear, more than anything, keeps us from following up. We're afraid we'll be rejected. That fear, more than anything, keeps us from reaching our goals, keeps us from feeding our family and setting up our retirement. Now, I know you've heard that before, but it's important to be reminded, or it still wouldn't be holding so many people back. And it's not just in the sales world. It's in all aspects of our lives. Fear keeps us from trying new things, whether it's a new opportunity, going for that promotion, or simply a new way of doing our jobs better. It keeps us from speaking up when we know we should. Sometimes we have a fear of failing. Sometimes we have a fear of succeeding. It's okay. Put on your brown pants if you need to, and keep on fighting. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. If we can conquer that fear, if we can blow that bolt, our odds of success go greatly up. So let me ask you this. Why does fear have so much power over us? Why do we let fear keep us from reaching our goals and achieving our dreams? Because we give it that power. We decide that it's going to affect us and our entire future. We go through all these scenarios in our head about how bad it can be, how mean people are going to be, how they're going to hate us, how they're going to look at us like a lesser person because we tried to sell them something, or make fun of us, or turn us down, that we see ourselves failing before we even give ourselves a chance to succeed. Let me ask you this. Does any of that sound familiar? So how do we overcome this? To begin with, we need to see fear for what it truly is. Fear can be seen as an acronym, false experiences appearing real. F-E-A-R, false experiences appearing real. Now, what do I mean by that? Again, we are masters at creating scenarios in our head. The problem is, it's usually the negative scenarios that we create. Before we even make the phone call, we can hear the person turning us down. Before we attempt the task, we picture all of the things that might stop us. We think of all the things that might go wrong as all the things that will go wrong. So we stall. We check our emails. We clean our desk. We talk to our coworkers or any other activity that keeps us from doing what we really need to do. And the truth is, most of those bad things will never happen. False experiences appearing real. Let me tell you a story. I was camping on the top of a mountain in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It was amazing. I had about a 270-degree view all around me, surrounded by nothing but miles and miles of snow-covered mountain ranges. It was amazing. Now, after dark, I was sitting by my fire, and suddenly my 2 dogs alerted. See, I often take my dogs with me in the wilderness as an early warning system. See, I've been chased by a bear, I've been surrounded by wolves, I've been stalked by mountain lions more times than I know. So it's nice to kind of have a little warning when something's deciding it wants to turn me into supper. And these aren't tiny little dogs here. These aren't little chihuahuas. They're both rescue dogs, pound puppies, and one of them is a golden retriever, and the other one is a black lab pit bull mix. So they alert that there's something in the stand of trees near me, and then they both fight for the space underneath my chair, cowering in fear. Now, these guys are supposed to be my protection, but they can't find enough space underneath me. So I get up to see what's stalking me this time, but all I have to see with is my tiny little headlamp, and I'm pretty sure the batteries are running low on that. So I go stepping away from the safety of my fire into the darkness very slowly, step by step. I move further out and further out, and suddenly it happened. I see 2 yellow eyes looking directly at me. You know, often when you're in the wilderness, you feel like you're being watched, and many times you are and don't even know it. But to actually see those eyes peering hungrily at you, that's a whole different feeling. Because I can't always depend on my protection, my dogs, I carry with me a handgun. In fact, it's a .44 Magnum 6-shooter. And I carry a .44 Magnum specifically because it's one of the most powerful mass-production handguns on the face of the earth. You may remember Dirty Harry's gun, and I'd have a chance of doing a little damage against a large predator, or at least be better than my fingernails. And now that I have eyes looking at me, it's time to unsnap the holster. I take another step forward, and another step, all the while peering around, hoping I don't see any more eyes looking at me, and really hoping that those that are decide to run the other way. I was disappointed on both counts. The first set of eyes watching me move but don't go away, and they're joined by a second set of eyes. Time to pull the gun out of my holster, just in case. I take a couple of more steps forward, and yet another set of eyes is watching me to my left. Time to pull the hammer back. A few more steps forward, and I have another set of eyes to my right, and another to my left. Now it's getting really serious. Now it's real. There are 5 sets of eyes looking at me, and I only have 6 bullets, and I'm not that good of a shot. I bring my gun up to firing position, choosing one of the sets of eyes as my first target, and hoping the others don't charge me before I can swing around. And at that time, my gun decides to malfunction. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, it begins vibrating, or shaking as it was. I'm quite certain it wasn't me shaking. I'm sure it was the gun. Now, I can tell you that at that time, I was really tempted to run back to the theoretical safety of my fire and fight the dogs for room under the chair. But what happens when you run from a predator? That's right, you become prey. If you back down from a predator, it gains power over you. You need to stand up to it and show it that you have no fear. It's exactly the same thing with your fear, whatever that fear may be, whether it's a fear of failure, fear of success, the fear of being rejected or yelled at, or whatever it may be. If you back down from your fears, then they gain power over you. You become more and more afraid of them. You procrastinate from doing the things you need to do, rationalizing that it's things that need to be done anyway, but the truth is, you're not doing what you need to do because of fear. Fear makes you uncomfortable, and naturally we shy away from things that make us uncomfortable. And I may have wanted to run back to the theoretical safety of that fire, but the worst thing you could possibly do is to run back to your comfort zone, because your comfort zone is where people and dreams go to die. So I took another step forward, slowly, trying to watch all the eyes at once to see which would charge me first, though still not able to clearly see the animal behind the eyes with my tiny little headlamp. And I took another step, and then it happened. I was finally close enough to see my fearsome predator. It wasn't wolves at all. It was deer. That's right, it was a herd of deer. A deer! What were they going to do? Eat my salad? False experiences appearing real. I was afraid of those eyes looking back at me out of the darkness. I visualized a wolf pack attacking me and killing me, ripping me to shreds. False experiences appearing real. Was a wolf surrounding me? No, it's rarely wolves surrounding us, even though it feels like it much of the time. It's usually just deer trying to act like wolves. Do those deer have power over me? They did at first. If I would have stayed cowering by my fire in my comfort zone, they would have continued to have power over me. I would have never ventured out. I was afraid of them until I went up against them and saw them for what they were, powerless over me. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Hypothermia acts in the same manner. Cold lulls you into submission. You finally reach a point where you're not cold anymore. You don't feel it. All you want to do is go to sleep. And if you go to sleep, you die. Be very careful. Fear can weigh you down in the same way. Don't be lulled into submission. Don't cower in fear. Get out of your comfort zone and live. I love the saying by John A. Shedd, a ship in a harbor is safe. But that's not what ships are built for. You're safe in your comfort zone, but that's not what you were made to do. You were made to conquer your fears. You were made to reach your goals and dreams. That's why they were put in your head to begin with. You've been given the vision, whatever your vision is, and you've also been given the strength to fulfill that vision. You've been given the resources or access to them. It may take work. It will take work, but you can do it. You may have to put on your brown pants, and you will have to avoid some torpedoes, and you will hit some torpedoes that will try to sink you, and you will have to sail on anyway, out of your harbor and into the great unknown open ocean of possibilities, dreams, and aspirations. Some people say to face your fears. I disagree. I say to look past your fears. See, if you face your fears, that means you focus on them. If you focus on them, they become larger. They become more real. Don't focus on your fears. Focus past them. In martial arts board breaking, we don't focus on the board itself. We focus every ounce of our being a few inches past the board. We don't focus on the obstacle. We focus past it. Take a second and visualize that. Picture yourself about to karate chop a board. To begin with, focus on the board itself. That board is constructed not to break. It's hard. It's certainly harder than your hand. You could very easily break bones on it. At the very least, you're going to get a really big bruise, some scrapes, and maybe some splinters. I've seen it happen time and time again. Mentally, what will happen is that if you're focusing on the board, you're going to automatically stop at the board. That's where your focus is. You're actually giving the board more power. On the other hand, picture yourself focusing at least 8 inches past the board. Focus on the goal. The goal isn't the board itself. The goal is somewhere past the board. If you focus on the goal strongly enough, the board loses its power. You actually blow past the board like it doesn't even exist, and you barely even feel it. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. It's the same thing with our own goals. Too often we focus on our fears. We focus on the rejection or the disappointment or whatever it may be that we're afraid of. By focusing on those, we give them power. We need to focus instead completely on the goal itself. Focus on how important it is that you reach your goal. Build your passion about how it will affect your life. How will it affect others' lives? How might it be bad if you don't reach your goal? Whose lives will be affected then? Feel that emotion and let it give you strength. How good will it be when you reach your goal? How will that affect your life and the lives of others? Internalize that feeling. If you focus on your fear less and your goals more, your fears will fade away. Here's an exercise for you to do right now, unless you're driving. Pick an object. I want you to do this. Pick an object across the room from you. Now put your hand in front of you at arm's length, close a fist, and stick your thumb up in the air between you and the object. Basically, give it a thumbs up, okay? Arm out, make a fist, thumbs up. Got that? Are you doing it? If not, this whole exercise won't do any good at all. Okay, do you have your thumb at arm's length between you and the object? Good. Now, with the object behind it, focus on your thumb. Can you see your thumb? Well, of course you can. It's crystal clear, big and bold. Now, keep focusing on your thumb, but can you see the object behind it? Well, you can. You can kind of tell it's there, but it's out of focus. You can't really see it. Now keep your thumb where it's at, but now stare past it and focus on the object. Can you see the object clearly now? Well, absolutely. It's clear as can be. It's right there, big and bold. But wait a minute. Your thumb's still in the way. How can you possibly see the object if your thumb is still in the way? Because you're not focused on your thumb. You're focused past your thumb. You're focused on the object, on the goal. I think you're already with me on this one. If we focus on our problems, our goals get out of focus. You can't see it well. It fades away. If we focus exclusively on our goal, then all of the would-be obstacles fade out of the way. They still may exist, but they just don't hold us back anymore. If you look past your fears at your goals and focus on how important those are, your fears will lessen and perhaps even fade away completely. I once worked with a man in direct sales who was former U.S. Special Forces. Special Forces! You can't come up with a tougher group of people. Get this, this man used to jump out of a perfectly good airplane so he could give the enemy a very bad day. And he was a very big man, a very intimidating man. Until it came time to pick up the phone to make a sales call. Then he would freeze completely. He was so focused on his fear of rejection that he lost focus on his goals. He was so focused on his thumb that he couldn't see what was past it. Come on, man, put on your brown pants. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I was on a jungle survival reality show, and one of the challenges was eating some really, really nasty things. Now, my partner was a novice, somebody that never even camped out in their backyard before, who told me she automatically threw up when she ate things she didn't like. Now, here's the problem. If one of us threw up or refused to eat it, we are automatically disqualified from the challenge and sent to an elimination round. Now, one of the delectable delights that we had to eat was a 2-inch larvae. A 2-inch live larvae. It was fat. It was juicy. When you looked at this thing squirming in front of you, it made your stomach turn. Okay? Knowing that when you put it in your mouth and bit down, you were going to kill this thing in your mouth. Its guts were going to squirt all over your tongue. That's enough to make anyone gag. Now, I watched my friend and a fellow survivalist, a U.S. Air Force survival instructor, attempt it before me. He began gagging. He became flushed in the face. His eyes were watering nearly to the point of crying. He, a military survival instructor, barely got that nasty thing down without throwing it back up again. I worked with my partner ahead of time. The host is going to try to make you focus on how nasty this thing is. She's going to say, oh, look at that. Look how nasty it is. Isn't that gross? Isn't that disgusting? She's going to try to really get you to focus on it. Whatever you do, don't buy off on it. Don't let her do it. I don't want you to be thinking about this thing at all. Instead, I want you to be focusing about the kids for that charity that you love watching this episode of the show and cheering you on. I want you to visualize those kids while you're doing whatever it is you're doing and putting in your mouth, whatever. I want you to focus on those kids completely cheering you on. Now, what she didn't know is I was telling myself the same thing. See, I'd eaten larvae before and other nasty things, but never one as big as this. In fact, I told myself I'd never go on a reality TV show like this because I don't have to eat nasty things. When it was our turn, we both quickly put the grub in our mouths. When I chomped down on mine, it literally squirted guts out of my mouth onto the table in front of me. The host made some comment, I don't know, and I just kept on chewing. Things were going great until I realized that I was automatically not eating the head. I had stuffed it in my cheek without thinking about it. Just like you would any part of the food you didn't want to eat and you're planning on spitting out later, the problem was spitting it out wasn't an option for me. When I realized I was doing this, I remembered what was in my mouth. I remember seeing that head on that 2-inch long fat larvae with all of those teeth in a round circular mouth and how disgusting it was. The thought of it came crashing back into my mind again, and as I tried to swallow, I gagged. This might be it. This one fear, no matter how legitimate it was, may keep me from winning. Take back control, I said to myself. Don't focus on the head, focus on the goal. Focus on being done with this and being proud. Focus on not losing the event. That did the trick. I thought about all the scouts that were watching me, that were watching this episode, cheering me on. And just the thought of losing at that point made me mad enough to get back on track and focusing on the goal. A couple more chews and I was able to swallow it. I even licked the juice that had squirted out of my mouth on the table just to prove to myself that I was back in charge. My partner, the one who was worried about throwing up, she had hers done in half the time as me and was cheering me on the whole time. Fear causes procrastination. It can even cause complete paralysis. We've all been governed by fear at some point in the past. The difference is, are we going to let it control us in the future? Are we going to focus on fear and give it power, or focus past our fears and put them behind us where they belong? Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of fear. You've probably heard the story of Bethany Hamilton, the 13-year-old surfer whose arm was bitten off by a tiger shark. Can you imagine the fear she must have had even thinking about going back in the water again? I can't speak for you, but I wouldn't even go near a bathtub after that. I'm afraid I would have taken a good look each time I sat down on the toilet, just to make sure there wasn't anything in there that would bite anything off. See, fear easily could have stopped her, and everyone would have understood. But she took control over her fear. She refused to let it define her actions and hold her back from her goals, her dreams. Get this. She was back in the water within 30 days of that shark attack. 30 days! Within 2 years, she won first place in the Explorer Women's Division of the NSSA National Championships. So, remind me again, what are you afraid of? What's been holding you back? Is it as bad as a shark biting off your arm and almost killing you? No? Then you really have no excuse, do you? Okay, it's final exercise time. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is the action step. Grab some pen and paper. Go ahead. If you pause this recording, I'll wait as long as you need. Okay, now, do you have it? What are some of the fears you have? An article in Business Insider dated February 27, 2016, entitled The 7 Most Common Fears Business People Must Overcome, lists the following. Number 1, the fear of criticism. Next, fear of poverty. Then fear of old age and death. Fear of failure. Fear of offending others. Fear of looking foolish. And fear of success. Now, let me go through those again so you can write them down. Fear of criticism. Fear of poverty. Fear of old age and death. Fear of failure. Fear of offending others. Fear of looking foolish, and fear of success. Now read back over the list. Have any of these held you back in the past? Which ones? Was it the fear of failure? The fear of looking foolish? Possibly the fear of poverty? Take some time for self-reflection and really think about this. Be specific. Who were you afraid of looking foolish to? Who were you afraid of offending? Why were you afraid of failing so much? Who would be disappointed in you? Yourself? Someone else? In what way did those fears hold you back? To help you in your self-examination, let's look at a couple of them. Number 1, the fear of criticism. The question isn't, are you going to be criticized? The question is, which is worse, getting criticized or not reaching your goal? Are the people who criticize you going to put food on your table? Will they take care of you in your old age, help your children go to school, feed those starving people in an undeveloped country, or whatever it is that will be affected by you not reaching your goal? If it's more important to you not to be criticized than to reach your goal, turn this recording off. Give it up. There's nothing I can do to help you. Because the truth is, you're going to be criticized. People won't like what you're doing or how you're doing it. They'll be jealous or competitive or whatever it is that makes them engage in that sort of behavior. On the other hand, if your goal is more important, then develop the attitude that your dream is more important than their opinion. The people who will be affected by you reaching your goal are more important to you than those who would criticize you. Recognize that they can't hold you back from achieving your goal. They have no power over you. Their opinions don't. How they view you doesn't. Nothing does. You're going to move on whether they like it or not. And they may not believe in you, but you do. And that's all that matters. Now on to the second one, the fear of poverty. Let's take this one to the extreme. Let's do this to the worst case scenario. If you fail and go bankrupt, wow, that's a heck of a worst case scenario, isn't it? Hey, it happened to Gary Heaven, the CEO of Curves International. This guy was a millionaire by 25 and due to bad business decisions, declared bankruptcy 5 years later. Wow, that's terrible. What a horrible end to what could have been a great story. Except that it wasn't the end to his story. See, he could have quit, but instead he learned from his mistakes. He started over, and he's now a billionaire. But it also happened to a guy by the name of Bill Bartman. See, he became a billionaire as founder and CEO of the debt collection firm Commercial Financial Services. A billionaire. That's great, right? He's got it made. Except that due to some bad and allegedly illegal business practices, he lost it all. Wow, his greatest fear came true. Well, not really. See, after he was acquitted of the charges, he pressed on. He wrote books that became bestsellers and then opened a new debt collection company that's highly successful today. Look, these sort of stories are endless. So for Gary, Bill, and so many others, the worst case scenario became the best case. It's in part because of those failures that they ultimately became so successful. They didn't let their fear of poverty hold them back, and it actually happened to them. Is it going to happen to you? I doubt it. Be smart about how you go about achieving your goal. Be smart with your finances along the way. Develop a business plan. Set up a safety net. And just know that in the back of your mind that even if the worst did happen, it's still not the final chapter in the book. It's just the one that people are going to be the most impressed about in your memoir. So, what are you going to do about your fears? Now, I mean that as a real question. What are you going to do about it? See, hopefully by now, you realize that there is no reason in the world for you to let fear hold you back anymore. You recognize your fears for what they are, false experiences appearing real. They're not wolves, they're deer. You're not going to focus on your fears anymore. You're going to focus past them with all of your eyes on your goal. You're going to embrace the new mantra, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. You're going to sail out of the theoretical safety of your harbor, away from your campfire. You're going to put your brown pants on if you have to. And when it comes to fear, you're going to blow that bolt.
This has been Bolt 1, never letting fear hold you back again. Next, we'll take excuses out of your life forever in Bolt 2.